Sometimes the best way to get a feel for the whole, huge, complicated story of our world isn't to look back over years or even decades. Sometimes all it takes is one day, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now.
So, what can all the news from a single day really tell us about where we stand? We're basically hitting pause, taking a snapshot of one 24-hour period and just looking. We want to see what patterns, what tensions, and yeah, even what little glimmers of hope pop up when you see it all laid out together.
And the day we've picked, it's February 2nd, 2026. Let me tell you, this was a heavy one. It was a day that really shows a world kind of on edge, dealing with huge changes and pressure coming from pretty much everywhere.
Okay, so first up, let's dive into the big stuff, global power plays. This is all about the high-stakes game of international diplomacy. And on this one day, man, you could almost feel the tectonic plates of global power shifting around.
And sometimes there's nothing that cuts through the noise like a direct quote. Get this. Just a few weeks before a really important meeting, President Trump calls the president of Colombia, President Petro, a sick man. Wow. Talk about setting a frosty stage, right?
So fast forward to February 2nd, and that meeting is actually happening. They're at the White House, all very formal, but you can just imagine the tension in that room. On paper, they're there to talk about cocaine production. But the real story, the subtext, was all about this super strained relationship, already beaten up by sanctions and, well, words like the one we just saw.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, we see this huge strategic pivot. The U.S. and India hammered out a major deal. Here's the trade-off. India says, okay, we'll stop buying Russian oil and buy from you instead. And in return, the U.S. says, great, we'll slash tariffs on your goods way down. This is so much more than just a trade deal, It's a massive geopolitical shift happening right before our eyes.
But here's the thing. While the U.S. is strengthening that alliance, other countries are making their own moves. On the exact same day, you've got China and Russia saying their relationship is about to break new ground. And down in Latin America, Uruguay is getting closer with Beijing, pretty much ignoring warnings from the U.S. So what does this all mean? It means we're watching a world with a bunch of different power centers, all jockeying for position at the same time.
Okay, let's pivot a little. We've talked about presidents and these big power plays, but now let's bring it down to the ground level, to the real human cost of all these global tensions, because behind every single one of those headlines, there are people's lives.
Just look at this number, 22.6 million. Just let that sink in for a second. That's a staggering figure. A new study came out on this day, published in The Lancet, and it warned that because of major cuts in international aid from countries like the U.S. and the U.K., we could see that many additional deaths by 2030. It's just a brutal reminder of the real cost when nations turn inward.
And the immediate cost of conflict was impossible to ignore on this day. In Gaza, we saw the Rafah crossing open for just a few hours, a tiny, fragile crack of light in a very tense ceasefire. In Ukraine, a Russian drone strike hit a bus carrying mine workers, killing at least 15 people. And in Pakistan, a huge 40-hour operation against insurgents finally ended, with over 140 killed. 3 totally different parts of the world, but one shared, awful story of violence.
But even on a day like this, you find these little signs of hope. And here's one. The airport in Khartoum, Sudan, it was totally destroyed during the Civil War just a few years ago. Well, on this day, after a ton of renovation, the very first commercial flight landed. It's just a powerful symbol, isn't it? That even after complete devastation, people start to rebuild. It's a small step, but it's a step back towards something normal.
All right, let's bring the focus back home to the United States. Because while the U.S. is making all these moves on the world stage, the news on February 2nd shows a country really struggling with itself, dealing with some deep divisions, and asking some fundamental questions about what it even means to be America.
And a huge part of that identity is birthright citizenship. The idea that if you're born in the country, you're a citizen. It's right there in the 14th Amendment. Well, on this day, the Supreme Court announced it's going to hear a massive case, a case that challenges that very principle. The outcome here could literally redefine what it is to be an American.
And that sense of a nation divided, it was everywhere you looked that day. You had more than 300 abolish ICE protests popping up all over the country. The Justice Department dropped over 3 million pages of the Epstein files, shaking people's trust in powerful institutions even more. And then you have this wild story about former CNN anchor Don Lemon getting indicted for supposedly interrupting a church service while he was reporting. Each one of these headlines, it's like a fault line running right through the country.
Okay, for our last section, let's talk about the two things that connect pretty much all of us, no matter where we live: money and technology. And on this particular Tuesday, both of them sent some serious shockwaves around the planet. Whoa, just look at these numbers. The markets got absolutely hammered. We're talking a bloodbath. Gold and silver, down big. Asian markets, they just plummeted. This wasn't just a little dip, this was a full-on rout. A huge red flag that there was some serious fear in the air. So what was spooking everybody? It all came down to one thing: the fear of an AI bubble. The anxiety had been building that all this hype, all this money pouring into artificial intelligence, that it had created this massive, unstable bubble. And on this day, that fear that it was all about to pop, it was very, very real.
But what's so interesting is when you put that huge global fear next to the everyday reality of tech. On the exact same day that markets are freaking out about an AI bubble, Microsoft is just, announcing its next update for Windows 11. And it's not about doomsday scenarios, it's about practical stuff like, hey, now you can resume your Android apps on your PC. It's such a great reminder that technology is both this massive source of global anxiety and at the same time just a tool that makes our daily lives a little bit easier.
So there you have it. That's our snapshot. Just one day, February 2nd, 2026. You see global power shifting, you see the heartbreaking cost of conflict, you see a country wrestling with its own identity, and you see entire economies trembling, all of it happening at once.
When you piece it all together, what you get is this powerful and honestly pretty unsettling picture of our world at a moment of huge change. That was the story of just one Tuesday. And it really just leaves you with one big question, doesn't it? What's the story going to be tomorrow?